When most people visit London today, they come for the sights like Buckingham Palace or the Tower of London. But it wasn't always this way. In fact, the city has a really dark history that few people know about. In this series, we take you to some of the most haunted places in the world. And while many are happy to brush off these scary stories as mere myths and legends, there are some truly terrifying tales from London that even the most skeptical can find hard to dismiss. From ghostly whispers to blood-stained streets, here are some of the darkest secrets hidden in London's past. Before we get started, be sure to hit that like button for more videos. Also stick around until the end to learn about one of the most disturbing historical figures ever to walk the earth, Jack the Ripper. Chapter 1: The Hanging Gardens. Tucked away at the top of a quiet residential street in Notting Hill is a quaint little garden. It's surrounded by beautiful houses with pastel-colored doors and window boxes overflowing with flowers. And during the day, it's a wonderful place for children to play and for neighbors to relax. But as soon as the sun goes down, it turns into something straight out of a horror movie. That is because this garden is built over the site of a former gallows, where hundreds of people were publicly hanged, including women and children. To make matters worse, the bodies were left up there afterwards as a warning to others. Imagine sitting in your garden one evening, and all of a sudden your pet runs over to a certain part of the lawn, starts digging, and then brings back human bones as a souvenir. Well, that's exactly what happened in 1984, when someone found a skull, a thigh bone, and several other bones in the garden. They were taken to the local museum, where an expert identified them as being between 700 and 800 years old. According to reports, the bones may have belonged to victims who were put to death for various offenses, such as stealing food or for being an accessory to a crime, like receiving stolen goods. Many historians also believe that the garden is haunted by the ghosts of those who died there. People have reported hearing chains dragging, footsteps, and screams in the middle of the night. And some say they've even seen shadowy figures walking around the trees. So if you're anywhere near here after dark, watch your step because you never know what you might stumble upon. Chapter 2: The Ghosts of St. James Park. St. James Park is one of London's oldest parks and one of the 3 royal parks that are still owned by the Crown. It is located right next to Buckingham Palace and is a popular spot for tourists and locals alike to take a stroll or have a picnic. But what most people don't realize is that the park is also home to a number of ghosts. One of the most famous is that of Catherine Howard, who was the 5th wife of Henry VIII. She was known for her beauty and vivacious personality, but she also had a bit of a wild side. She liked to party, and she wasn't afraid to flirt with other men. This caused a scandal when it was discovered that she had been having an affair with one of the servants at court. As soon as Henry found out, he had Catherine arrested and sent to the Tower of London, where she was charged with treason. She was found guilty and sentenced to death, and she was executed by axe in 1542. Her head was cut off and displayed from the top of London Bridge as a warning to other women not to follow in her footsteps. Some say that Catherine's ghost still walks the grounds of St. James Park, and she can often be seen sitting on a bench or strolling through the gardens. Others say that she appears in the lake, and some have even heard her voice echoing through the trees. There's also the ghost of a Civil War soldier who is said to appear on the battlefield, and the spirit of a young girl who died in a boating accident on the lake. But perhaps the most active ghost in the park is that of King George II. He's said to appear in various places throughout the park, and he can often be seen riding his horse or driving his carriage. His ghost is also said to be responsible for moving objects and shaking beds. If you want to see any of these ghosts for yourself, though, you'll need to visit the park at night. Chapter 3. Bedlam. Bedlam, formerly known as the Bethlehem Royal Hospital, was a notorious mental asylum that operated in London from the 16th to 20th centuries. It's now long gone, but the horrors that took place within its walls are still remembered today. At its peak, the hospital housed more than 1,000 patients, most of whom were chained to the wall. The conditions were absolutely terrible. The staff were underpaid and overworked, and they often resorted to torturing their patients in order to treat them. Some of the treatments that were used included bloodletting, which involved draining the patient's blood, and electroshock therapy, which was used without any kind of regulation. The patients were also subjected to cruel punishments if they misbehaved. They would be locked up in small rooms or force-fed until they were sick. In addition to the physical abuse, the patients were also denied basic necessities like food and water. It was not uncommon for people to die at Bethlehem Hospital from starvation or dehydration. The hospital was eventually closed down in the early 1990s. But the legacy of the horrors that took place there live on in the stories of the former patients and staff. There have been numerous reports of paranormal activity at the site, including voices, footsteps, and shadows. Some people even claim to have seen the ghosts of patients who died at the hospital. Chapter 4. Highgate Cemetery. The Highgate Cemetery is a Victorian-era cemetery in North London. It was opened in 1839 and quickly became the final resting place of many famous people, including Karl Marx, the writer of the Communist Manifesto. The cemetery is now closed to the public, but it's still maintained by a team of volunteers. One of the most popular attractions in the cemetery is the grave of the so-called Highgate vampire. In 1902, a local resident exhumed the body of a young girl who had died of the Spanish flu. She noticed that the body was in perfect condition and that the heart was beating. She immediately called the police, who arrived just in time to see the girl sitting up in the coffin. The girl was then taken to a nearby hospital where she died a few days later. The case became known as the Highgate vampire, and it led to a media frenzy at the time. Some people believe that the girl was actually a vampire who had risen from the dead. Others claimed that she was simply a victim of a rare medical condition. In recent years, the cemetery has become a popular spot for ghost hunters, and some claim to have captured evidence of paranormal activity on camera. Chapter 5. Execution Dock. This is where the infamous Jack the Ripper murdered his victims. His first victim was Marion Nichols, who was found dead in a pool of blood on August 31st, 1888. The killer had cut her throat and mutilated her body so badly that she was almost unrecognizable. Over the next few weeks, 4 more women were murdered in the same way. All of them were sex workers, and all of them were killed in Whitechapel, one of London's poorest neighborhoods. The police were never able to catch the killer, and the case remains unsolved to this day. But that hasn't stopped them from trying. In fact, over the years, there have been dozens of theories about who Jack the Ripper could have been, and there are almost as many suspects. Some of the most popular theories are that the killer was a member of the royal family, a doctor, or a government agent. But none of these theories have been proven. What makes the Jack the Ripper case so fascinating is that it was one of the first crimes to receive widespread media coverage. The gruesome details of the murders shocked the public, and the subsequent investigation captivated the public imagination. Today, visitors can take tours of the places where the murders took place. And there are also a number of museums dedicated to the case. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like button for more videos.